Hey everyone, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here with our weekly update on social media. So much going on this week. Really the collapse of the Justice Department in terms of integrity. To the degree it already isn't complete, there's no redeeming it with the new information that's out about the way Hunter and Joe Biden have been treated and investigations into their criminality obstructed. I'll talk about that. So outrageous. You won't believe the details that are coming out about this. And of course, there's that Hunter plea deal. That's all part of it, but that's just one aspect of the corruption. Also, we've had some at least good news in Congress, modest accountability for Adam Schiff. I'll talk about that. Adam Schiff, one of the worst members of Congress. Judicial Watch has a new lawsuit about the censorship that's ongoing by the deep state. Plus, we've got the details, as I said, on these new revelations about Hunter Biden and the efforts by Biden appointees to obstruct justice on his behalf. But before we begin, I want to point out I'm wearing the Judicial Watch t-shirt, or at least one of our shirts. They're all available. This and other fine merchandise is available on our Judicial Watch website or store. It's shopjw.org, shopjw.org. It's a great way to support Judicial Watch. You buy something from the store, and a portion of that purchase goes to support Judicial Watch. And so you can see our mark up here and in the back. I don't know, it's a little bit small, but you can see we have our motto. Our motto is because no one is above the law. I guess it's our motivation too, because too often here in Washington, D.C., we act as if there are a lot of people above the law, and that shouldn't be the case. And certainly our Republican form of government depends on that ideal, and that's why Judicial Watch has adopted it as its motto. So if you like this shirt, or you want mugs and keychains, you know, the type of typical merchandise a group like Judicial Watch would have, we've got a lot of great stuff there too. We got polos and sweatshirts and hats. We got great hats. There's a nice red JW one there I think you can go and purchase. So I encourage you to support Judicial Watch that way. You know, the left isn't going to give us money from the government, so you have to support us, dear citizens. So anything you're able to do, not only obviously you can make a purchase at Shop JW, but also you can just make a donation outright to Judicial Watch, because no one is doing as much to uncover government corruption in the face of significant pushback from the government as Judicial Watch is. So first up is the news this week that the Justice Department has ethically collapsed. They concocted and came up with a plea deal for Hunter Biden that limits the charges to 2 misdemeanors related to tax evasion. And then there's an issue about false statements on a federal gun form that isn't even part of the plea deal technically, meaning he's not pleading guilty to a charge. They're just going to immediately divert him into some sort of program to erase the gun charge essentially from his record. Now, as you know, Judicial Watch had been investigating the way the FBI and the Secret Service had been protecting Hunter Biden, specifically on the gun charge, where his then girlfriend and widow of his brother took a gun of his and threw it in a dumpster near a school, I think. And the reports were that the Secret Service and or the FBI went to the store where he purchased the weapons and vacuumed up documents. And we've been trying to investigate that through litigation for some time. But of course, the big deal is that this plea deal makes a mockery of the rule of law and justice. It obviously is not sufficient given the criminality that's been publicized about what Hunter's been up to, both in his laptop, through testimony of Tony Bobulinski, and just new information, for instance, showing that there were numerous years in which he evaded taxes that he doesn't have to pay anything for. And of course, he was operating, it looks like, as a foreign agent. Nothing's going to be done there in terms of criminal prosecution. I guess only Republicans get prosecuted for that. Think of Paul Manafort. You have bribery potentially there, conspiracy, and of course, that's just for Hunter. And by narrowing these charges, they protect Joe as well, because a lot of those charges necessarily would implicate Joe Biden based on all the evidence that's out there. So this was kind of this was a twofer in the last few weeks by the Justice Department. They set the table for 2024. Arrest Trump, come up with these slap on the wrist plea deal charges for Hunter that require no jail time, it looks like, based on the reporting, and thereby clear the board in terms of Biden corruption, potentially leading to the jailing of Trump just in time for the election. Now, the Biden gang, as suggested, the Attorney General, the U.S. Attorney and the Justice Department suggested, well, the investigation continues. Well, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense because you don't continue an investigation by indicting in the middle of it one of the key witnesses if there's going to be more substantial charges against him. I mean, this is it, according to Hunter's lawyers. And I think Hunter's lawyers probably have more credibility than Mr. Merrick Garland and Mr. Weiss, the U.S. Attorney in Delaware, who's been slow-rolling this case as well. And as we've been noting, this indictment is the result of a corrupt process, right? So the indictment is necessarily, the plea agreement is evidence of corruption. It's not accountability. That's kind of the crazy thing about it. And this is the statement we put out in response to the indictment or the plea deal of Hunter Biden. Again, misdemeanor tax violations and a false statement tied to a gun purchase. And the false statement, of course, isn't even going to be prosecuted, or he has to plead out to. Simply put, the Garland Justice Department's disparate treatment of Hunter Biden and President Trump is an abomination unto the law. The sweetheart plea deal with Hunter Biden is a thumb in the eye to the fair administration of justice. It is a miscarriage of justice whose chief beneficiary is President Biden. For far too long, Biden has avoided any serious investigation of his involvement in Hunter's corrupt foreign business dealings. The plea deal, which doesn't address the strong evidence of Biden family racketeering, is a sham. Garland has now cleared the board for Biden's re-election campaign by arresting Trump and shutting down the Biden family corruption issue with this rigged plea deal. And by refusing to appoint a special counsel, Garland avoids having to issue a public report disclosing the facts and details behind this charade. The Justice Department has been irredeemably compromised by its politicized prosecutions and cover-ups. Congress has no choice but to initiate an immediate impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden and Merrick Garland. In the meantime, Judicial Watch will continue its leadership role investigating and exposing the worsening Biden corruption crisis through our numerous FOIA and federal and state lawsuits. So this is just the beginning of the Biden corruption scandals based on the revelations that emerged immediately after this plea deal was announced. The revelations would show, as I said, it was rigged. The documents show, as released by the House Ways and Means Committee, a whistleblower who was the top criminal investigator at the IRS, responsible for investigating Hunter's potential IRS crimes or tax crimes, came forward, and his testimony, which was under oath, has really shocked Washington. Even the Democrats are a little bit nervous. This is what the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee said about this new information. The American people deserve to know that when it comes to criminal enforcement, they are not on the same playing field as the wealthy and politically connected class. the preferential treatment Hunter Biden received would never have been granted to ordinary Americans. And this is after he noted that IRS employees blew the whistle on misconduct at the IRS and the Biden Department of Justice regarding unequal enforcement of tax law, interference, and government abuse in the handling of investigations into criminal activity by President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, and retaliation against IRS employees for blowing the whistle on this issue. Whistleblowers describe how the Biden Justice Department intervened and overstepped in a campaign to protect the son of Joe Biden by delaying, divulging, and denying an ongoing investigation into Hunter Biden's alleged tax crimes. The testimony shows tactics used by the Justice Department to delay the investigation long enough to reach the statute of limitations. Evidence they divulged sensitive actions by the investigative team to Biden's attorney, and they denied requests by the U.S. attorney to bring charges against Biden. IRS employees who blew the whistle on this abuse were retaliated against despite a commitment IRS Commissioner Werfel made before the Ways and Means Committee to uphold their legal protections. Werfel is an appointee of President Biden. They were removed from this investigation. They were removed from this investigation after they responsibly worked through the chain of command to raise their concerns. The committee had acted in good faith with participation from Democrats and Republicans. Actually, Democrats voted against releasing this information. As the issues raised today ought to be a bipartisan concern, hopefully we can find a path forward to continue to go where the facts lead us. Now, and then he says something about, the powerful and connected, which is all well and good. It's not the powerful and connected. It's Hunter and Joe Biden who are protected. No other wealthy individual would get this sort of disparate, this special treatment that Hunter got. And here's the material. You have, this material was released by the House Ways and Means Committee after a partisan vote. Democrats wanted to investigate it further before it was released, which is hilarious. There are statements and letters from the lawyers, and these two documents are depositions of Mr. Shapley and his associate, someone who worked for him at the IRS, whose name is still confidential. And I'm going to try to go through, as best as I can recall, the various issues that have been raised by Mr. Shapley. Shapley was a supervisory special agent for the IRS Criminal Investigation Unit at the U.S. Department of Treasury. So he's a senior investigator who supervised line agents in carrying out the investigation of Hunter Biden, as that investigation related to potential criminal violations of the United States Code. So that's his statement that he had given pursuant to law to the House Ways and Means Committee. And one of the issues that he raised and that he knows has happened is that he saw that this infamous 1023D FBI document that documented the audio tapes, allegedly, made of Hunter and Joe Biden talking about their dealings with Burisma, the allegations of bribery that was sought by Hunter and Joe, $5 million for Hunter, $5 million for Joe, coercion that this Burisma executive faced or felt as a result of dealing with Hunter and Joe to engage in this bribery. And what had happened was that this information came in from a well-known source by a well-known FBI source, and Barr sent it over to the Delaware U.S. Attorney. Now, the Delaware U.S. Attorney, everyone is telling us, oh, he's a Trump appointee. Well, that's true, but it's misleading. U.S. attorneys in blue states are essentially political acolytes, or they're basically friends of the senators of those states. They don't move forward in the nomination process unless they're approved by the senators of the home state. So you have these various U.S. attorneys, and they're generally selected by the home state senators. And and whether it be Republican or Democrat, it doesn't necessarily tell you their political allegiance. For instance, Mr. Weiss, who was appointed by Trump, had been a long-time attorney at a U.S. attorney, worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office up there in Delaware, and he had been appointed as an interim attorney, U.S. attorney, or acting U.S. attorney by President Obama. It's a political position. So, I mean, Obama trusted him enough to let him run the office, the Justice Department under Obama. And so when it comes time for Trump to pick his U.S. attorney for Delaware, he was given this name, Mr. Weiss's name, by the two Democrats in Delaware who were senators. And that's how he got his job. So to call him a Trump appointee doesn't tell the full story. And you can see why the full story needs to be explained given Weiss's subsequent actions, including this outrageous and corrupt plea deal. Also, according to these whistleblowers, so you have Shapley coming out and saying this, and virtually everything he said has been confirmed to the extent it was possible by his colleague who was working with him on this case. So there are two whistleblowers. So Mr. Weiss evidently had tried to go to U.S. Attorney to get Hunter indicted on serious tax charges that go back to 2014 or 15 here in Washington, D.C., because that's where he was living and doing business at the time. And the Biden-appointed U.S. Attorney, Mr. Graves, here in Washington, D.C., refused to let him do it. And as a result, those charges have disappeared because it's too late. The statute of limitations has passed. Similarly, there were other charges that were sought in the Central District of California that seem to have been squelched by the Biden Justice Department. Also, Mr. Weiss himself, according to what Weiss told a whole bunch of people at a meeting that Shapley attended, had sought to be given special counsel status by Merrick Garland, and Garland declined. Now, in response to these allegations that are in black and white here, and there's so much other detail. For instance, there's a text message to, it looks like one of Hunter's Chinese communist business partners, and he's texting, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't have the text in front of me, but you can look it up. I'm sitting here with my father, and you better give me the deal, come through on the deal you promised, otherwise I'm going to tell my father, and, you'll be harmed as a result if you don't come through because of what my father will do to you. I mean, just naked intimidation and threats based on his relationship with his father. And the text was sent shortly after Biden was, I think it was in 2017, so he wasn't vice president. But obviously he was a powerful political figure, and he was a putative candidate for president even at that time. And it further demonstrates that Joe was involved in all of Hunter's business dealings. And of course, they didn't want to do that. And according to Shapley, you had Biden DOJ officials intervene to warn attorneys for Biden that there was going to be a raid on a storage unit of Hunter's, that they restricted their ability to use Hunter Biden's name in certain subpoenas and discovery requests. They restricted they were restricted from asking about the big guy. So they specifically said you can't ask about Joe Biden, it looks like. And then you had this outright obstruction where Weiss wasn't able to get charges filed that he wanted to get filed, which would have been much more significant. Reportedly, I think there was $8 million in income that he didn't pay taxes on that they never charged him with in terms of criminal tax evasion. So talk about special treatment. And so Trump gets arrested, and guess where Hunter was this week? Guess what his big deal was this week? He was at the White House for a state dinner with the Prime Minister of India. I mean, talk about in your face, we don't care what you think. We're untouchable. That's the Biden's White House approach to this. And Garland was asked about this at a press conference today. And he said, well, Weiss has full authority to do that, to do anything. I don't know how it could have been stopped. Any prosecutions could have been stopped. Well, that's not a response. Were they stopped? Did he ask you to be special counsel and you refused to appoint him as special counsel? Now, there's a special counsel looking allegedly into Hunter's handling of records, Joe's handling of records. And what was interesting is the New York Times asked me earlier this week to talk about the Hunter Biden investigation a bit. And I made the point again by not appointing a special counsel. The regulations require you to appoint a special counsel in the Justice Department if there's appearance of conflict of interest. It's, people obviously see a conflict of interest when Biden's Justice Department is investigating his son, especially when the allegations relate to Joe as well. And the response by an anonymous source in response to my complaint was that, well, we hadn't done special counsels for prior presidential family members in the past. Well, first of all, that's dishonest because it avoids the connection to Joe. But secondly, it's not true. I mean, they were targeting Donald Trump Jr. through the Mueller operation. So it's completely at odds with the facts. And the special counsel, one of the differences between a special counsel and a U.S. attorney, despite, I think the technical differences are sometimes overstated. But the special counsel is required to issue a report. So by avoiding a special counsel appointment for Hunter, for instance, under this plea agreement, let's say the plea agreement was the end of the road here, there would have been a report by the special counsel as to what went on and what they found. None of that is necessary here. So to me, what should be the response? Of course, Judicial Watch is going to continue its litigation, as I said. We've got federal and state lawsuits designed to uncover the full truth about Biden family corruption. At least dozens of Freedom of Information Act requests. I would say upwards of 10 FOIA lawsuits at this point now. I dare say it, no one's doing more to investigate Biden corruption through litigation than Judicial Watch. And of course, Congress has got to get on the ball as well. Now, there was an impeachment inquiry or articles of impeachment that were raised by Lauren Boebert, the congresswoman from Colorado, right? She wanted the floor to vote on it right then and there. And Republican leaders didn't want it to happen, so they shelved it. Oh, they said, no, it's don't worry, the process continues, but it's being buried in committees now. I mean, you could have had articles of impeachment, the way I understand it, voted on this week, just on Biden's failure to secure the border and aiding and abetting the invasion of the United States of America in a way never seen before in American history. And so, as this astonishing evidence of corruption by Joe Biden and his Justice Department comes out this week, Republicans are essentially tabling impeachment of Joe Biden. But I think, this shows what the Justice Department's doing here, not only with Hunter, but the targeting of Trump. It shows that there's no way, any Republican who says we have to let the criminal investigations work their way through, I mean, what earth are they living on that they think this Justice Department is ethically or legally capable of investigating Joe Biden fairly, or frankly, any members of his family fairly, in a way that American people can have confidence that it's being done on the up and up. And so Congress has got to do what it can do under the law, and I think impeachment is warranted. As a matter of fact, they don't have a choice. It's unavoidable if they're doing their job. And then secondly, or maybe firstly, you cut funding for, you restrict, you change the law related to how the Justice Department's operating. Who was involved in this effort to obstruct this investigation? Zero out their salaries. Defund the operations that are abusing American citizens now, like the operations targeting Trump and other innocents, Jack Smith, etc. Impeach Garland. Refer for criminal investigation Garland if he lied about his involvement in the Biden investigations. I mean, we can go through bit by bit, piece by piece, what the Congress is able to do, none of which they seem really willing to do. I mean, I hear, every time I raise this issue with Congress, and I don't raise it that much because it's so frustrating because I get the same answer each time, because I know you're concerned about it. So I say to staffers and members of Congress when I run into them, hey, what's going on with accountability? The American people, we don't want to spend too much money, and we want the border secure. There's all sorts of issues out there, but they also want to make sure our republic is still alive after the Biden administration. And that means you have to stop the unlawful abuse of American citizens everywhere you can. And the typical response is, well, we're still investigating it, which is fine. I mean, they are doing much more. I mean, for instance, this material that came out from the Ways and Means Committee and the whistleblowers and the work of Comer and Chuck Grassley and Jim Jordan is light years ahead of prior Republican investigations, not only in terms of aggressiveness, but in terms of speed. So I don't want to overly criticize it. But on the other hand, what they're doing is obviously necessary but insufficient given the time frame we're in. And I don't mean because of elections. I mean, you wait 2 years, and it's too late. It's too late. And you can't just yell about someone after they leave office and think that's accountability. I mean, it's just not the way it works. So that's why Congress really needs to get on the ball here. And, Judicial Watch will keep on pushing on this outrageous corruption. But I tell you, as I said, when I talked to Congress about this, or members of Congress, I said, well, we're talking about defunding the FBI's headquarters. I mean, color me underwhelmed. Now, I understand that FBI wants some gigantic headquarters that would turn them into some sort of even more of a monstrosity than they already are. And I understand that. That's fine. But it's woefully insufficient in terms of reining in FBI abuses. It's woefully insufficient in terms of reining in Justice Department abuses. So there's an emergency, right? There's a rule of law emergency here in Washington, D.C. Congress needs to step up. And I hope the courts, for instance, start taking this more seriously. I haven't talked, I don't know what, I shouldn't speculate as to what the legal possibility of this is. But I wonder, and maybe the experts out there can tell me, can a court, or would a court, given the circumstances of this plea agreement with Hunter, say, no. I have evidence here it was corrupted and obstructed, this investigation, and I'm not going to rubber stamp a plea agreement that's the result of government corruption. Based on my understanding, a court could do that. Whether they will or not, I leave it to you. But I think that's something that should be looked at and seriously considered. Similarly, with Trump's indictment, I hope the courts there shut that down as well, given the lack of the fact that there is no good faith basis to target Trump for mishandling documents that he had a right to have. I mean, that's the essence of it. The left doesn't want to deal with that, but that's the essence of it. And it was the prior position of the Justice Department in the Clinton-Sock case. They changed their position, and they said, oh, all of a sudden, where we used to believe that a president deserved all the deference in the world because it's Trump, we're going to try to jail him and change our mind on that and say he deserves no deference that we gave every other president in American history under this law. I hope the courts see through that immediately and shut it down. But in the meantime, as I said, Judicial Watch will continue its heavy lifting for the rule of law with your support. Like I said, we've got Hunter Biden investigations and lawsuits going on. We're in Delaware about the documents that that Biden has hidden up there. We've got lawsuits against the archives over Biden corruption from the day when he was vice president, as it relates to his son and other entities around his son. We're going to sue soon, I think, about this FBI document related to the Burisma bribes, the $10 million in Burisma bribes that have been alleged by that source. We still haven't seen it publicly. I don't know why Congress hasn't released it. Well, I do know why Congress hasn't released it, because they don't think they're able to under law yet. So let's get a lawful version of this document so we can give it to the American public so they can see what it is they were trying to bury. Oh, by the way, that document was hidden from the IRS investigator I'm talking about, the bribery document. I don't know if I said that in the beginning. So there's a lot going on, but significant developments. I mean, if the city was run sanely, this material would be the end of the Biden presidency. But it's not run sanely. So it's something to be overcome by the deep state and their media acolytes and the Democrat operatives that can control and run our media. And so what do we do in response? We do what we can under the law, and we educate the American people. You call your members of Congress. You say this has got to be taken seriously. We don't want investigations world without end. We want accountability and punishment as soon as possible under the law. They know what to do. They just don't want to do it. And I have to say, one of the things I noted this week is thank God for these conservative women on the Hill, members of Congress who are taking a leadership role. It's not to say we should take special note when women do great things, but the media loves promoting left-leaning women and their leadership while mocking conservative-leaning women and their leadership. And so we've had these exciting leadership moves by female members of the House who were conservative. I was talking about Congressman Luna last week, who we're working with to try to get information on the leaks targeting her by the Air Force. Marjorie Taylor Greene, obviously, she's been out there showing leadership. Boebert was out there showing leadership. So that's just great work. And also Congressman Luna did something that is well past due, which is she got Adam Schiff, one of the worst members of Congress, censured by the House of Representatives, something that happens relatively rarely, believe it or not. And why is Schiff one of the worst? Because he knowingly lied about Russia. He abused his office to target his political opponents. He abused his office to try to remove a president without foundation, not once but twice. So talk about sedition. It doesn't get any worse than Adam Schiff. And this is the resolution that was passed finally. It was initially, the first version of it was rejected because I guess there was a big fine that was a potential underneath that made some Republicans nervous. Even though the fine was legal and legit, they still were nervous. So they took away the fine aspect. And this is the resolution that was passed. And I'm going to read it because it's worth sharing, because the abuse by Schiff should not be forgotten, because it colors and it helps explain what it is the deep state was doing, which were his allies over in the FBI, Justice Department, et cetera, and trying to target Trump. So this is the resolution. House Resolution 521. Whereas the allegation that President Donald Trump colluded with Russia to interfere in the 2016 presidential election has been revealed as false by numerous in-depth investigations, including the recent report by Special Counsel John Durham, which documents how the conspiracy theory was invented, funded, and spread by President Trump's political rivals. Whereas Representative Adam Schiff, who served as ranking minority member and then chairman of the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence of the House of Representatives, occupied positions of extreme trust, affording him access to sensitive intelligence unavailable to most members of Congress. Whereas for years, Representative Schiff abused this trust by alleging he had evidence of collusion that, as is clear from reports by Special Counsel Robert Mueller, Department of Justice Inspector General Michael Horowitz, and Special Counsel Durham, never existed. Whereas for years, Representative Schiff has spread false accusations that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia. Whereas on March 20th, 2017, Representative Schiff perpetuated false allegations from the Steele dossier accusing numerous Trump associates of colluding with Russia into the congressional record. Whereas once abusing his privileged access to classified information, Representative Schiff released a memo justifying the accuracy of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrant applications to Trump associate Carter Page, of which was later found by Inspector General Horowitz to have 17 major mistakes and omissions, provoking FISA court presiding judge at the time, Rosemary Collier, to state unequivocally that the Federal Bureau of Investigation, quote, misled the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. Whereas ranking minority member and chairman of the Intelligence Committee, Representative Schiff behaved dishonestly and dishonorably on many other occasions, including by publicly falsely denying that his staff communicated with a whistleblower to launch the first impeachment of President Trump. Whereas as part of his impeachment efforts during a hearing on September 26, 2019, President Schiff misled the public by reading a false retelling of a phone call between President Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Whereas on March 28, 2019, every Republican member of the Intelligence Committee signed a letter calling for Representative Schiff's immediate resignation as chairman, whereas Representative Schiff hindered the ability of the Intelligence Committee to fulfill its oversight responsibilities over the intelligence community, the ability of the Intelligence Committee to fulfill its oversight responsibilities over the intelligence community, an indispensable pillar of our national security. Whereas these actions of Representative Schiff misled the American people and brought disrepute upon the House of Representatives, now therefore be it resolved that the House of Representatives censures Adam Schiff, representative of the 30th Congressional District of California, for misleading the American public and for conduct unbecoming of an elected member of the House of Representatives. Representative Adam Schiff will forthwith present himself in the well of the House of Representatives for the pronouncement of censure, which has occurred. Representative Adam Schiff will be censured with the public reading of this resolution by the Speaker. The Committee on Ethics shall conduct an investigation into Representative Adam Schiff's falsehoods, misrepresentations, and abuses of sensitive information. And you may have seen the video of all the Democrats surrounded Schiff and started cheering his name. That's how they celebrate misconduct and abuse of power and sedition and a coup plot to take out our President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, celebrating the man who did it. Now, what happens next? I think there's more than enough for expulsion. I think he should have been criminally investigated for his contacts and communications with members of the, with those involved in the Ukrainian phone call deal that showed, looked to me like the mishandling of classified information and the illicit sharing of classified information. Certainly there's enough for expulsion here. Impeachment's another matter. I think he technically can be impeached, although the Senate, I think, as a matter of habit, doesn't like to even try members of the Congress under impeachment. They just want to charge executive branch officials with impeachment. They don't want to charge themselves. And what's going to happen in the House of Representatives next? So they shall investigate it. So that means there has to be an investigation in the committee concerned about ethics. But the problem with the Ethics Committee is that it's split half and half. Unlike committees in the House typically, where the majority rules, right? You have more members of the majority party on a committee, so the committee essentially does what the majority wants to do, assuming all the Republicans or Democrats, whoever is in majority, all agree on that committee. But in the House Ethics Committee, you've got, I think, 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans. I think it's 6. It doesn't matter, but it's split evenly in half. So the action that would be done has to be done with a majority if there were any findings. So you can imagine where that's going to go. So that's the challenge in terms of holding Schiff accountable. But you have to give credit where credit's due. I'm glad they were able to censure him. It's, as I keep on saying, it was necessary, but it's not necessarily sufficient. But even getting to that necessary step took some leadership. And so I appreciate everyone who did it, and you should call and thank them for all members. Find out what they did, let them know what you think about their votes, and demand more. Demand more accountability for people like Adam Schiff. And we need more censure resolutions, for people like Eric Swalwell, people like Ilhan Omar, other people who have ethically engaged in misconduct that isn't being adequately investigated by the House Ethics Committee because of this bipartisan split that essentially stops the Ethics Committee from doing anything substantial. So, but Schiff is, he could be senator one day. He's running for Senate in California. So he may not be in the House much longer if the primary works out well for him. And he, of course, if he wins the primary, he's likely to be senator, given the political makeup of California. So we might have Senator Schiff. Who knows? But I do think he shouldn't be immune from investigation and/or prosecution because he's running for office or because he will even become more powerful in Washington, D.C. So that's the reality of it. We can't let the fact that people are in high office, it means they get away with misconduct and corruption. I mean, with Trump, they target him despite having not engaged in misconduct and corruption, and the reverse of that is people like Schiff get away with murder. So in terms of government corruption, something that I think is terribly serious and is ongoing is the censorship of American citizens by big tech media in collusion with the Biden administration. And prior to that, it was deep state agencies under the Trump administration. And Judicial Watch has been pushing very hard to investigate this censorship with lawsuits. We've sued over censorship in California against the state there who abused our civil rights by censoring our videos related to election issues in 2020. And Judicial Watch has a number of FOIA lawsuits already pending, and we just filed a new important one against a key agency that you may have never heard of before in the Department of Homeland Security. So the Department of Homeland Security, you may recall, was set up after 9/11 to better manage Homeland Security and protect us from foreign threats. So, of course, what did the deep state do? They immediately weaponized it against American citizens, almost immediately, and specifically conservatives. And in this case, there was an organization that was set up within the Department of Homeland Security, and I think the Trump administration allowed it to take place, which was a mistake. But this is where everyone was all nervous about Russia interference in the 2016 election, which in large measure was immaterial. So they came up with this cybersecurity, what do they call it? The Cybersecurity and Information Security Agency, designed to protect us from foreign intervention in our elections through the internet and such. So what did they almost immediately start doing? Censoring Americans who were concerned about mail-in balloting and other election law changes, and just questioning elections generally. So all First Amendment protected speech. They didn't care much about the so-called Russians. And to the degree they cared about it, they maligned Americans, not necessarily Siza, but others, maligned Americans who suggested there were issues in the 2020 elections by accusing them of being Russian agents. It was outrageous. Schiff was big on doing that, by the way. Adam Schiff. So we have filed a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit just recently against the Department of Homeland Security for all records of communications tied to this, what I believe to be a nefarious entity called the Election Integrity Partnership. It's the anti-election integrity partnership as best as I can tell. And we ask for all emails, direct messages, task management alerts, or other records of communication related to the work of the Election Integrity Partnership sent via the Atlassian Jira JIRA, J-I-R-A, platform between any official or employee of the Cyber and Information Security Agency and any member, officer, employee, or representative of any of the following. And so this is the fronts on the outside that we're helping censor Americans. The Election Integrity Partnership, the University of Washington Center for an Informed Public, Stanford University's Internet Observatory, the Center for Internet Security, the Elections Infrastructure Information Sharing and Analysis Center, the National Association of Secretaries of State, the National Association of State Election Directors, Graphica, the Atlantic Council's Digital Digital Forensics Research Laboratory, and any social media company. All memos of understanding, guidelines, or similar records related to the Cybersecurity and Information Security Agency's use of this computer platform for work related to the Election Integrity Partnership. So this Election Integrity Partnership essentially was a collaboration between these government entities and big tech and these left-wing allies on the outside, like the Center for an Informed Public and the University of Washington, the Stanford University's Internet Observatory, etc., to censor Americans. And they did it through this JIRA platform. I may be mispronouncing it, but it's J-I-R-A. And JIRA is a software application developed by an Australian company which helps teams plan, assign, track, and report and manage work. It brings teams together for everything from agile software development, customer support, startup, and enterprises. So by teams, substitute, when it comes to suppressing your First Amendment rights, co-conspirators. And so what we're looking for is information about the conspiracy between the Biden administration and, frankly, the deep state under the Trump administration and these outside entities using this specific computer system to censor you. That's how they did it. You know, we've been looking and researching this issue extraordinarily carefully, our investigators and our lawyers. There have been some public information about this as a result of the Twitter files, and Judicial Watch is not slowing down. And we've filed additional lawsuits to uncover the details of this censorship. And it's not because, unlike Russiagate, because I think Russiagate's still continuing, meaning the abuse of Trump by the Justice Department and the FBI. See the indictment. The censorship of Americans hasn't stopped. Twitter, it's been dialed back significantly by Elon Musk, and they're trying to destroy him as a result. Facebook, it continues. YouTube, it continues. Google, it continues. Google owns YouTube. Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, it continues. And they all have parent companies. Meta is Facebook and Instagram. Alphabet is Google and YouTube. And then you've got companies like LinkedIn and companies like that also casually censor Americans for being on the wrong side of issues. And as we get closer to the election, there's going to be more election censorship. And it's going to be at the behest of the Biden administration. And we need to shut it down. And one way you shut it down is by exposing what's going on. And that's what we're doing with this lawsuit. Based on representations from the Election Integrity Partnership, the federal government, social media companies, the Center for Internet Security, which is also funded partly by the DHS and the Defense Department, they communicated privately on this platform, this sophisticated computer program that I shared with you about. They stated the EIP, this is what the Election Integrity Project describes itself as doing. The EIP's core conveners are the Stanford Internet Observatory and the University of Washington Center for an Informed Public. We work in collaboration with some of the nation's leading institutions focused on analysis of online harms, including the National Conference on Citizenship, Graphica, and the Digital Forensic Research Lab, which I think is a left-wing group out in, I think that's in the UK. To be blunt, the Biden Department of Homeland Security is unlawfully hiding evidence of their election interference and censorship of Americans. That's what's happening right now. This is why we're in court. We asked for the documents and they refused to give them to us, contrary to law. So now there's lawlessness on top of the lawlessness of secrecy on top of the lawlessness of election interference and censorship. And as I said, we have all sorts of other litigation. We sued in January of this year the Justice Department for their communications between the Federal Bureau of Investigation and social media sites, because the FBI is pushing this censorship as well, in addition to helping Hunter hide gun information, it looks like. In September, we sued the Secretary of State of California, as I said, for having a YouTube video of Judicial Watch taken down. That's going to be on appeal now. And we published documents revealing how, the way we got into that lawsuit, we found out how California Secretary of State officials, were working, it looks like, with the Biden campaign's PR firm. Oh, but it's not the Biden campaign, it's just their PR firm, to censor Americans complaining about election law issues. So there's a lot going on. Judicial Watch has at least a half a dozen lawsuits on this, including a substantial one directly against, related to the violations of our civil rights against the state of California. And we're pressuring through litigation for the full truth on the Biden administration's continuing censorship of American citizens on election issues. And, by the way, on COVID issues and other issues where we've found that they're working hand in glove to continue to censor Americans as it relates to vaccines and criticism of COVID policies. I mean, for instance, did you see that Robert F. Kennedy's Jr., he's now a candidate for president, they took down a video of his from YouTube because it supposedly had vaccine misinformation. I hate to use the word misinformation because it's a made-up word by the left, and I'm not even sure what it means. Now, I know technically what they think it means, but it's really just another excuse for saying, I don't agree with that, or I dispute it, therefore let's come up with a new word to make it seem like a bad thing in order to justify censorship. And that's why they say the word misinformation and disinformation. It's things other people say that you want to censor. Now, I guess, as a citizen, you may say, I don't want to see that. I want to censor it. But if you do it through the government, and you do it through improper pressure of corporations, or corporations do it through illicit business practices and an illegal collusion with the government, then it's illegal. And the First Amendment is under attack in a way it's never been under attack in modern American history through this ongoing censorship. And Judicial Watch is deploying, I think, significant resources to do so. And with your support, we will do even more. So as I said in the beginning, support Judicial Watch. Buy our merchandise, shopjw.org. And otherwise, get the word out about all the information we're uncovering for you, the American people, as a Republican form of government and the rule of law faces an attack like it's never faced before, at least in modern American history. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you here next time on the Judicial Watch Weekly Update. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.